Have you ever chased something so hard only to lose the passion for it? That was me. I went from the top marksman in my police academy to not performing at the level that I thought I could in a real world scenario. The fear, the pressure, it absolutely crushed me. And it wasn't until I stopped chasing and started choosing that everything changed. So today we're going to talk about performance anxiety, purpose, and the powerful shift that helped me fall back in love with what I do. This might just be the shift you need, so hang with us. Rewired Experience Podcast, where we turn stress into fuel to help you achieve purpose and greatness. I'm your host, Kyle Stoy. I'm a combat vet, a retired SWAT operator, and an entrepreneur. And now I coach people like you to overcome the things keeping you stuck. So in this episode, we're diving into something every high performer deals with: the pressure to perform, otherwise known as performance anxiety. More importantly, how chasing validation is absolutely going to kill your passion, but choosing challenge and purpose is going to reignite it inside you. Okay, what I want to share with you today is a story. When I was a young, not even a police officer yet, didn't have my first police job, I was going through, it was a police academy preparatory course to get your certification so that you could get hired by an agency as a certified officer. Different style of police academy. A lot of states host these type of police training academies now, different than what I was actually an instructor in. And I didn't get that experience. Wish I had. That was cool to be a part of that as an instructor. And I think I often looked at that, man, I wish this would have been my police academy experience. But the kind of style of the academy I went through was broken up into different skill blocks, and then much like a college classroom setting, right? And so during the firearms training block, I performed really well. I was the top gun in my academy. And so what that means basically is there's training, right? And then there's like evaluation or qualification block. So if you're not familiar with kind of the way that structure works, if you're in the military or if you've been in law enforcement or something along those lines, and you're familiar with what I'm talking about, there's the training piece and then there's the evaluation piece. During the evaluation piece, really during the whole thing, I performed really well. And I was what's called the top gun in the academy. And that just means that I had the highest overall scores for the entire firearms training block of the academy. And so I think out of 6 or 7 qualifications, I had a perfect score on almost all of them, except for, I think maybe one. And I think I was maybe a round off or something where I didn't get a round in the time or something along those lines. But all that to say, I did really well. I performed at the top of my class, at the top of my game. And so you would think this would translate into kind of that real world scenario, but I'll get into that here in just a second. But what I want you to know is when it came down to evaluating my ability in that particular skill set, that particular tactic, or however you want to refer to it, I did really well. And I think it was because I went into it with confidence, not really understanding necessarily the impact that outcome could have. To me, it was almost like a grade. It was almost like, let's go in here, let's have fun. My hope is that I pass it, right? Because it was just one of those boxes you had to check to be able to become a certified police officer, be able to market yourself out there to different agencies and things like that. So that was my outlook on it. It was very relaxed. I felt pretty confident. I had some military experience, not a lot. I was a military police officer, so I did have some experience with a sidearm as well as long range weapons and things like that. Never done like a pump action or anything like that. But overall, I had a lot of confidence going into it. And so I think that definitely affected my ability to perform well. And I'm going to expand on that again as we go along here. But hang on to that point. I was just immersed. I was choosing to show up and grow. It was a choice. And that was the frame of mind. That was how I was framing the entire experience. So here's the takeaway from what I just explained. And this is what I want you to hold on to. Confidence isn't born from chasing outcomes. It's born from choosing the process, the reps, and the discomfort. Okay, so fast forward, I get hired at my agency about 2 years, I guess around 2 years into my career, 2001. There's an active shooter incident, and it was wild. A guy just picked up a rifle and started walking down the street, taking victims at random. And I was involved in that. I was a part of that, a part of the 3 guys who would actually engage that guy that day with firearms. I'm oversimplifying. I'm always skeptical of the algorithms here. Bear with me. I'm trying not to use certain verbiage and things like that because they'll throttle down this stuff and it just won't get out to people. So bear with me on my language as I search for my words here, because I'm trying to make sure that I'm being appropriate. I could definitely use more tactical language, more direct language, but I want you to understand why it takes me a minute sometimes to skirt around that. So bear with me. Give me your grace. Give me your patience. We'll get through this. In that incident, tactically, I did well. Communication, tactical ability, all of the things that were very important to actually responding to the incident. Everything even when I evaluated, I'm like, man, I did well. Communicating to my partners, tactical movement, even my visual assessment of the quote unquote situation or battlefield, however you want to break that down, I did well. But where I didn't perform, and I've talked about some of this in my other podcasts, where when certain senses are heightened, then you tend to, some of the others suffer. They don't necessarily perform to full ability. So as an example, when you can hear really well, maybe you're not seeing as clearly. When you can see super clear, maybe you're not hearing as well. And so some of these things happen in combat environments for a reason. And I think I understood that to an extent, but I definitely wasn't thinking about it in the moment. And so all that to say that the thing that I thought I would do really well, which would be marksmanship. And I want to be careful and respectful in what I say here, because I don't want to be specific in the other guy's roles. That's their story to tell. Everyone out there did amazing. I think I was the one that I was scrutinizing myself the most. So that's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm saying here is that it's those guys' story to tell, and I'd like for them to tell it. I'd love for them to tell it on the podcast. But again, why I'm stumbling over my words and skirting this parts of this story. So let's just say I felt like I felt short in that particular area that day. Marksmanship, not decision-making, not tactical communication, not tactical movement, or any of the other things. That thing that I did really well in training is what I felt like I did the worst that day. And I was very in tune with the outcome in terms of what was the immediate outcome of that performance. And that whole thing, the way I processed that, the way it happened, it triggered an identity crisis, right? Like I immediately started to struggle with my performance. And because of the way I perceived my performance, cue the identity crisis. If I was the top shooter, how did this happen? That's my mindset. So that's a great takeaway here, right? Something to ask yourself. If that were to happen to me, or when something like that happens, when the thing that I'm good at suddenly breaks, what happens when my performance doesn't match my identity? Fast forward, really, I think it was a matter of months, maybe a year at the most. I go through SWAT selection. So I try out for the SWAT team and I make it on the SWAT team. I actually performed pretty well in the selection process itself. But then as I get into SWAT training, there were a lot of things. And again, I've talked about that in some other podcasts. I had some physical injuries. I had a lot of life events going on. I was going through a divorce. But then I also had this performance anxiety thing going on that really hadn't revealed itself until I started doing our firearms training for the SWAT team, and I started underperforming. I went through a long range course and failed that course, had to go back and recycle through the long range course. I continued to struggle with some of the regular training courses and evaluations. And I was doing enough to get by to make the minimum standard. And that's what's funny is the minimum standard for a SWAT operator was actually higher than the minimum standard for, say, a patrol operator. So their required score was lower than ours. And we had to shoot ours at least once a month, and they do theirs like quarterly or something. So we had to show up at least once a month in a 16-hour training cycle. And we would do all these like performance assessments. They would constantly assess our ability every single month. And so it was in this that performance anxiety started to creep in. I was really wrapped up in what I thought this revealed about me as a person, as a police officer, as a SWAT operator now, right? And all of that was super humbling. And I think, if I'm being super transparent, it was humiliating to me. And you put that together with everything else that I was going through, and this was the place that I was in. I wasn't having fun. And really, what was the pinnacle in my career, when I went into law law enforcement. I wanted to be a SWAT operator. Like I wanted to be on the SWAT team. I knew this represented the top 10 to 20% or so of the entire department. And I wanted to be in that category. I wanted to be one of the elite operators. And this is one of the best departments in the entire state. And so I knew if I could make that team, that would mean something. That would be the label I needed to be confident. And that is not what happened at all. So the internal narrative was this, or this is what it became. If I fail at what I said was easy, because that was my attitude with firearms in general. So firearms was my strong suit up until that point. But then all of a sudden it was like this divine humbling in this, and it needed to be that massive incident, this real world incident where lives were at stake, where I started questioning my own ability and what I had referred to up until then as easy. When somebody would talk about firearms training, I go, yeah, that's easy. That's easy. It's easy to me. It's always come easy to me, which was somewhat true. But that was a really dangerous statement, because when you fail at what you said was easy, then maybe you're not good enough at all. That was the narrative in my mind. If I failed at what I said was easy, then maybe I'm not good enough at all. And that started bleeding into everything that I was doing. So when I first went into police training, I was choosing the craft. It was fun. I was in there, like I said, like I mentioned earlier, it was a part of a learning experience. It was the journey of getting better. I didn't necessarily look at it as an outcome that mattered. I was just there to get better and have fun. I had gotten to a place to where I wasn't doing that. I wasn't choosing the craft anymore. I was chasing the outcome. I was chasing that score on that piece of paper that I was punching holes in. I was putting all of the weight on that thing right there, that one thing, because I was chasing respect. I was chasing validation. I was chasing self-worth. And that's why it started to unravel for me. And that's what was causing the anxiety. It was all in how I was framing it. So here's how I reframed it. And I honestly don't know. I know I really started working on my physical fitness. I really started coming into my own, getting through some of the personal stuff that I was going through, those battles. And that's important to recognize here. You know, sometimes it just piles on you, man. And it sounds really easy to say, just reframe the way you think of it. It's simple. Reframing is simple, but it is not easy. You need people in your life. You need inputs, right? Like we talk about in the Rewired Experience framework. This is about me changing my perspective. And once I started to change my perspective, I needed inputs from people, from like my circle of influence, even training environments, books, church. That was a big one for me. Finding a spiritual mentor in this time was really big for me. And that helped my inputs. And because of that, I was able to redirect and redefine my direction at that point and reestablish some goals with a whole new perspective. Take a knee, change your perspective. Drink water, change your inputs. Reshoot your azimuth, reestablish a new micro goal. And then Charlie Mike, which just means don't quit. It means continue mission. I applied this here without even really knowing that's what it was, because it hadn't necessarily been born yet. This is before I was even exposed to that whole framework. But the thing is, this was at some point, that reframe moment, that changing my perspective, where I had a moment of insight and I shifted my mindset to this. What if it's hard and that's okay? And that gave me permission to have fun with it. That allowed me to reconnect with the love of the actual activity and fall in love with the journey instead of being so connected to the outcome or the score on that piece of paper. I reconnected with the love of the craft, not to prove, but to grow. I gave myself permission to enjoy the process again, not just chase those results. So here's something for you. When you're chasing something, you're trying to prove your worth. But when you're choosing it, you're living your purpose. So once I reframed it and I told myself, man, Kyle, just go out here and have fun with it. Just that, I gave myself permission to just go have fun. Not that it wasn't important, because it was. This is an important aspect of what I did as a tactical operator in an elite unit within the police department. I had to perform at an elite level. But what I told myself is just go out here and have fun. You know, don't take it so seriously. Like, it's worth it. It's going to be hard, but have fun with it. I didn't tell myself it was easy. I never said that. I just said, just go have fun with it, because that was the frame of mind I was in when I was in the police academy. I wasn't attached to the outcome because I didn't understand that any of that really mattered. I just thought, hey, I get through this, I get my certification, I get on with my dream department, and then I can go try to get on the SWAT team. Like that was my mindset. I didn't think that performance would matter. But when you're attached, when you have that fixed mindset attached to that outcome, then you're likely to fail. What we do, a lot of people go, this is easy, I can do this. But the thing is, when you say it's easy, you're cheapening it. Don't say it's easy, just say it's worth it, and give yourself permission to have fun, but acknowledge, yes, it's going to be hard, because if you tell yourself it's easy and then you fail, then you wreck your own credibility. You wreck your own trust in yourself a little bit, because now you're like, I told myself it was easy like I did in the beginning, and now I failed at it. That wrecks my whole identity. Tell yourself it's worth it. It's okay to say it's hard. Tell yourself it's simple, because simple is different than easy. But don't tell yourself it's easy. Don't ease into easy. That gives when you say something's easy, you give yourself permission to take the easy way almost every time. Acknowledge that it is hard, because when you do something hard, when you show up anyway, that's a big deal. And you should emotionally celebrate yourself for that. I'm not saying jump up and down and scream, hey, if that's what you want to do, whatever. But what I'm saying is that acknowledge that it's hard, acknowledge that it's worth it, and then tell yourself just to have fun. Give yourself permission to have fun. Then you get better without chasing. Burnout it's avoided because you reframe performance as a playful discipline and not anxious validation. So what I've done, even with the word discipline, is I've reframed the word discipline now. And really there's kind of two types, and who knows, maybe I'll come up with more. But there's playful discipline, which is what I'm talking about now. I just said, hey, go have fun with it. Not that the outcome doesn't matter, right? Don't tell yourself it's easy, because that's tricking yourself into saying that it doesn't matter. It does matter. It's worth it. It's going to be tough, but choose it anyway and have fun with it. That's playful discipline. There's another type of discipline that I use to get me through those hard times when I don't want to do something, when I'm procrastinating, and I call it grateful discipline. And what that is, to me, I serve a power larger than myself. And if you're not in that place, this is going to be a hard one to put into play. You're not going to have any place to put this gratitude. But for me, it's almost like a love letter to my creator, a thank you note to my creator. When I do something hard anyway, even when I don't want to, and I know that when I do that hard thing, it's going to make an impact, because it's probably using my gifts. It's probably using my purpose. So to me, that's what I call grateful discipline. If you can frame it like that and realize, like, even when it's things like my body, let's use working out or eating as an example. When I finally really embraced that as a lifestyle, it was because I embraced it as a grateful discipline. Because man, I'm just grateful to take another breath today. I'm grateful to be on this earth and to be able to impact people in a positive way through YouTube, this podcast, our online community at Rewired Experience, where you can find us as rewiredexperience.com. So go over there, check it out. But that's my passion. And there's a lot of days I don't even want to show up for that. But because of my grateful discipline, then I do it anyway. I do it anyway, and that's what helps me not to burn out with it. And not that I don't struggle with that sometimes. And I think sometimes you got to jump back and forth. You might jump back and forth from grateful discipline to playful discipline. But one way or another, this is a great way to reframe discipline so you don't procrastinate. So you can get yourself out of bed to go to that workout. So you can have that tough conversation with somebody where you need to repair a relationship, like whatever that thing may be, so that you can skip that fast food meal and eat something healthy. Maybe you got to find a way to have fun with it, or you got to find a way to reframe it in gratitude. But those are two ways that I am able to approach and implement discipline as a skill, because it's a skill you have to build. And those are the ways that I do it. So here's the big takeaway from all of that. I reclaimed joy. I reclaimed my edge. I stopped chasing perfection and started choosing the process. And that's when everything shifted for me. So what are you chasing right now? Is it a business goal, a fitness milestone, a recognition? Maybe it's time to stop chasing and start choosing. Choosing the hard thing because it's yours. Choosing the uncomfortable step because it's the one that leads to purpose. If you're feeling burnout, if you've lost joy and you just can't reframe that discipline to get into action, to Charlie, Mike, to set a goal, if you've got emotional detachment from whatever it is you're trying to do, then frame these as signs of chasing, not choosing. So if this hits home, I want you to ask yourself, where in my life have I started chasing instead of choosing? And then write it down, reflect on it, then choose differently. Because chasing leads to burnout, but choosing leads to becoming. If this hits home today, subscribe to the podcast. And if you want to help on this path, head over to rewiredexperience.com, because that's where we're building a movement of people choosing hard things on purpose. And it's a super cool place to be. People are transparent. We do calls at least once a month where we jump on, we share these kinds of journeys, we share these kinds of breakthroughs, and we're real with each other. We're lifting each other up instead of calling each other out. And so I'm going to wrap it up there. You guys, just like always, I'm going to leave you this. Take a knee, drink water, reshoot your azimuth, and Charlie Mike, and we'll see you on the next episode. Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to watch this video that is right here, and YouTube's recommending. It's going to be right in alignment with the one you're watching now, and it's going to take you on a further journey to help you understand what you're choosing and what you're chasing, and to maybe help you break that cycle so that you can find your purpose, turn your fear into fuel, and Charlie Mike.